My name is Jessica S. Campbell, and I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in Palm Beach County, Florida. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a term I think a lot of people are familiar with, but maybe don't necessarily understand what it means or what they might be able to expect when they actually go see a therapist. So in the simplest terms, it is the idea that how we think about things, or our cognition, and how we act because of those thoughts, or our behavior, is kind of the foundation for how we experience the world. So if we're experiencing stressful states like depression, anxiety, or anger, it's due to or maintained or exacerbated by our biased ways of thinking. And it's the therapist's role to help us recognize that bias through the application of evidence, experimentation, and logic. Now, it's not the therapist's role to be a cheerleader or to take on the role of that old Saturday Night Live character, Stuart Smalley. We're not going to say, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like you. Although I definitely understand that sometimes that's what you want your therapist to say. Our role is actually going to be to challenge your beliefs. One of the core concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy is called the ABCs, which is that there is an activating event followed by your beliefs around that event, and then the consequences that come from it. So an example of that might be you're walking through the mall, you see a coworker, you start to smile, wave, and they brush right by you. And your belief is, that jerk, they didn't even acknowledge me. And the consequence is the next time you go into work, your body language is very closed off, you're aloof, dismissive, maybe a little passive-aggressive, and your working relationship goes downhill, it becomes more stressful, anxiety-provoking. Now, if we go back to that original activating event, when you're walking through the mall, you see your coworker, smile, start to wave, they brush right by you, but now let's change your belief. That instead of believing, that jerk, instead you go, wow, they seem really distracted. And when you go to work the next day, instead of being, closed off and passive-aggressive, instead you approach them and say, hey, I saw you in the mall the other day. You seemed kind of distracted though. Is everything all right? And now you've opened up a dialogue. And, maybe they say, oh wow, I'm sorry, I didn't even see you. I was just really, really busy that day. Or maybe they say, God, got a lot going on in my life right now, and I'm sorry. How can I make it up to you? Or, whatever the cause. The difference is that the outcome is certainly more positive. It isn't a kind of downward spiral of a negative working environment or relationship. And really the only thing that changed was how you believed the activating event was going to impact you. The activating event itself didn't change at all. What changed is what you thought about it and what you did, your cognition and your behavior. So when I'm working with a therapist, my job is really to kind of challenge their thinking, challenge their beliefs, and get them to try to attempt new behaviors, see what comes out of those. That's where our experimentation comes in. Instead of doing this thing that you do all the time, what would happen if you tried this other thing? For example, I might challenge black and white thinking, which is so common in our current culture. If we look at our political discourse, it's very, I'm right, you're wrong. There's really very little room for creative interpretation or thinking outside of, this kind of binary paradigm. I might challenge things like comparison. Something else I really see a lot in my practice is we see people's kind of curated lives on Facebook, or in common culture, celebrity TV, things like that. And we compare ourselves at our worst to someone else's, greatest hits. We're always going to come up negative in that equation. I might challenge things like crystal ball gazing, another one that I see a lot, which might be, a client comes in and says, there's this promotion and I'd really love to have it, but you know what, I decided I'm not even going to try and go for it. It's just going to stress me out. I'm not going to get it anyway. And I might say, okay, but why do you think you won't get it? What would be the worst case scenario if you went for that promotion and didn't get it? What would change? Well, nothing would change. I'd be in the exact same spot. Okay, so nothing would change. That's our worst case scenario. Why can't we give equal time to the opposite of that? What would happen? What would change if you did get it? How can we move forward in that direction? So basically, I'm trying to get people to look past their fear, their past negative experiences, to look past, that kind of comparison, that mind reading, that thinking that, it's just not going to work out for me. And get them to start to embrace, a more pragmatic approach of, but what if it did? Why do I think it wouldn't? Why do I think I'm not capable? Where does that belief come from? And what if I challenged it? What could happen if I tried something else? What might I be capable of? What kind of life could I lead? My greatest joy as a therapist is actually getting people to take those first steps and start to, go down that road of experimenting with trying a new behavior and seeing what happens. Most often, people are pretty surprised by what does come about when they just change how they think about something. So I hope I've given you something to think about and maybe answered some questions you would have about cognitive behavioral therapy. If I haven't, please feel free to contact me. My website is jessicascampbell.com. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.